How's it going, guys, and welcome to this long-term review of my Magura MT5 brakes. Let's just drop straight into the review, shall we? And don't forget, if you want to get to know me, share some of my rides, see me review loads of equipment like I'm going to do today, or just get some of my tips and tricks, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and also press that notification bell so you don't miss anything. So in my opinion, your brakes and drivetrain are by far the most important part of your bike in terms of feel and performance and reliability. A set of brakes that fade or that are really hard to get a good bleed on, or that you go through pads on really quick, a real nuisance. They're just as bad as like a drivetrain that's shifting like crap. But with that said, upgrading or making the decision to upgrade a drivetrain or a set of brakes is not an easy one to take. So like if you take, for example, a set of Shimano XT brakes, just per wheel it's going to cost you about 75 quid. For a full set it's going to cost you about 150 quid, and then you've got to add rotors onto that, so you're probably looking at just over 200 quid for like not entry level but like a kind of mid-range set of brakes there. So it's not an easy decision to make because it's a lot of money, and with that kind of money you can make the mistake of pimping out your bike with like handlebars or some anodized parts, or just some colourful jockey wheels for your derailleur. There's lots of things that you can do instead of that. All those little bits of a bike are just, if you opt for that over like a set of brakes if you've got crap brakes, or a new drivetrain if you've got a crap drivetrain. Sticking anodized parts on your bike is like the equivalent of sticking a spoiler on a car, on like a little hatchback, or a bigger silencer on a hatchback, without even, upgrading all those things, without even looking at the engine or the brakes or anything like that. It's upgrades for vanity as opposed to performance. And there's no two ways about it. A set of brakes that aren't performing really hold you back in your riding. Brakes, you think of brakes as something that slow you down, but if your brakes aren't working properly, you're going to be holding back on the descents, you're going to be slowing down much earlier on corners and stuff like that, and it really affects the overall performance of your ride, having a set of brakes that are either unreliable or not working very well. So I think it's really important to make the right call and upgrade your bike in terms of performance instead of vanity. If you can afford to do both, then do both, but if you've got an underperforming piece of equipment on your bike like a drivetrain, brakes, suspension or whatever, get your suspension service, replace your brakes, get a new drivetrain on there. These are way more important than anodized bits and pieces, That's the decision that I make when I upgraded my brakes. I looked at some better, because what happened was my SRAM guide Rs, if you've not seen my initial review of the brakes, my kind of first look at the brakes, you'll know that my SRAM guide Rs failed basically. They kept overheating, and then one day they completely failed on a really bad corner, and it could have been a real bad incident. So I decided to upgrade my brakes, and I looked at kind of XTRs for, Shimano XTRs. I looked at a better set of SRAMs like the Guide, what are they called? I can't remember, but the better guides again, Ultimates or whatever they are. I looked at Hope, I looked at some Hope brakes because it was something different, but I really, really wanted to try something a bit different, and I knew that I needed power, I knew that I needed better cooling because of the fact that I'm a big guy, I ride in a hot area, I ride fast, I ride mostly descents and enduro stuff, so I really wanted something a bit different. And I'd heard of, because I'm a follower of Danny Mackerskill, as a lot of people are, I'd heard of Magura brakes when he was sponsored by them, and he did his own signature set of MT7s. So I'd heard of Maguras, and I started to look at them and started to learn a little bit more about the technology, what makes them slightly different to other brakes, and I really liked the look of them. Now, you don't have to go for the signature MT7s, you can go for the MT7s, which are the kind of the top of the range sort of downhill enduro, basically gravity brakes, but the MT7s, even the ones that aren't the signature brakes, will run you about 200 quid per wheel before you get the rotors. The rotors are like 30 euros as well, so you're looking at about 250 quid a wheel, so that's 500 quid altogether. It's a little bit rich for my blood. But when I started looking a little bit further into it, the MT5s, which are the brakes that I've got, which are the one level down from the MT7s, they're still in the gravity range that they offer, which means that you still get the 4 pistons in each caliper, so you still get loads and loads of stopping power, but without the price tag. You can get them cheaper now than I did when I bought them, but on Magura's website, they'll run you like 120 euros. You can get them on chain reaction cycles for like 80 quid a wheel, and then again, you have to go for they say you have to use use the Magura rotors, but I don't know how much truth is in that. They're the completely stainless steel ones. They haven't got the kind of aluminium centre on them for the better heat dissipation. It's the only thing with the Magura discs. But so with the MT5s, you can probably set yourself up now for less than 250 quid, which is a massive saving on the MT7s, considering you get pretty much the same, braking power as you do with the MT7. So it was a bit of a no-brainer for me, really. So I'm going to be reading off my phone here for a minute because I want to run through some of the numbers with you at the start of this review. So I've had the brakes on my bike now for about 9 months. I've covered about 275 miles, not including 6 or 7 bike park days, which will probably double the mileage, to be honest, because that's 6 or 7 full days in bike park, so that's a lot of miles, and it's all on the descent as well. So probably looking at upwards of 500 miles on these brakes now. The riding I do is all enduro or downhill, so this area that I live in is all enduro style riding, steep, gnarly trails, and then I go up to the bike parks north of here. I did a trip to the UK where I hit some more bike parks, so all enduro and downhill riding that I've done on them so far. The first set of pads lasted about 225 miles of enduro style riding, and I think I did 2 or 3 bike park days on those same pads, so you're probably looking at just over 300 pretty hard going miles in the hot as well. I got these in the summer in Spain is when I put them on the bike, so they had a hard run of it, even though the mileage isn't very high, but they are quite known for the pads wearing fast. The front brake has been bled once when I bought the brakes. The rear brake has been bled like 3 times because the guy in the shop couldn't get a decent bleed on it. Ever since he got a decent bleed on it, I haven't had to bleed them since. Brake overheating incidents, I've had 0, whereas I used to have them all the time on the SRAM Guide Rs. And sort of brake fade incidents, I've probably had 1 on the rear brake, and that's because the pad had worn almost all the way down, so the pistons were all the way out, which I guess means there's more oil in the caliper to heat up, and they overheated. They didn't overheat, but I got a little bit of brake fade that day and had to stop, and I can't remember, I might have pissed on the caliper or something to cool it down, but once I cooled it down, it was right back up there again, and I didn't have any other brake fade problems with it at all once I replaced those pads. So that's kind of a basic rundown of my experience with the brakes so far. So I'm going to look at my phone again. So if we run through a bit of a list of kind of the main features, the standout features for good or for bad, this is just me giving you a basic list of what the features of the brakes, so as you know whether you like the sound of that or not really. So what I'll do is I'll run through these now. So the main positive for me is obviously the 4-piston kind of downhill powerhouse calipers that you get with these MT5s as well as the MT7s. Yeah, that's really cool. The stopping power is unbelievable. So that's the first kind of and main sort of selling point for me. One thing that's not so good that you get with the MT7s is there's no bike point adjustment. There's no lever blade. Well, there's a lever blade reach adjustment, but it has to be done with a Torx head screw. There's not like a thumb screw for that. The brake bodies on this are made of something that they call carbotecture. It's plastic. It's like a really hard plastic. It doesn't feel like a cheap plastic, but it is plastic. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But it's also worth keeping in mind that that's not a cheap downgrade of these MT5s. That's the technology that they believe in for all of their brakes. The MT7s, which are kind of the best in their range of gravity orientated bikes, are also made of the carbotecture, so it's not like a cheap downgrade for the MT5s. That's the technology that they believe in and that they put on all of their brakes. I think this is a bit of a given, but there's matchmaker clamps available for these brakes that work with SRAM. I guess there's the same for Shimano, so I've got like a matchmaker clamp on my right hand side brake to match my 11-speed shifter, my SRAM shifter, so that's fine. The brake pads are really easy to install and remove. They've got this like magnetic thing to them where the brakes basically snap into place and you can pull them out dead easy because there's no kind of retaining spring in there, which can be a pain in the ass and you can lose. So I think that's definitely a good feature. And then with the MT5s, you get like the 2-finger, the bigger brake blades, the lever blades, whereas with the MT7s you get the single fingers. It doesn't bother me too much, if I'm honest, the 2-fingered brakes, and it's actually all right for me with big hands. I've just shifted the brake levers inboard on my handlebars and I use them like a single finger set of brakes, so it doesn't really bother me too much, that one. But they're the main features there that I've just run through. I don't think there's anything really that needs to be added to that. So now I'm going to go into the things I like, and the first has to be the power and the modulation that you get with these brakes. They're just magnificent. They're so powerful with those 4 pistons and a decent set of pads in there that you haven't polished off. Yeah, the stopping power is amazing, but at the same time it's not like you almost throw yourself over the bars every time. It's not like you're always skidding everywhere you go. There's an absolute ton of modulation with these brakes, even though they're super powerful on the high end of really giving it a handful. Like, you know, they really are super powerful. The modulation is brilliant, and I do a lot of really steep riding, so I've really tested them thoroughly on that front. If that's your thing, power and modulation, these are the brakes for you. They have to be. The second thing I really like is just the reliability on the long descents. After the SRAMs that I had continual problems with in this part of the world with the style of riding I do with my size, I'm like 16 and a half stone. And you know, I descend pretty quick. I get some top 10s on the Stravas around here out of like 300-400 people, so I don't hang about. And these brakes on long descents, like the furthest you can descend around here in one sort of go is about 5,000 feet. So that's 5,000 feet of kind of split over kind of 5 descents, but without much link track in between. Like, you know, it's all pretty steady descending if you've got it in you. And these brakes didn't even, you know, they didn't even overheat on that day. So the reliability of these things is just second to none. Just absolutely spectacular on that front. And then the third thing that I really like is the feel. The thing that I notice when I jump on my mates' bikes is that they've normally got SRAM or Shimano brakes, and they always seem to have it set up so as the bike point feels like it's really far in, and like you're almost on the bar when you're giving it an absolute handful. I like my brakes to be set up really far away from me, for there to be a good bit of travel on the lever, but for them not to bite so late that when I'm giving it an absolute handful, I'm, you know, not pulling the lever all the way back into the bar. Now, I know that my mates that run their brakes further in, I know that that's probably like a setup preference thing for them, but it just seems out of all the brakes that I've had, that the Maguras are much easier to set up for my preference. Like I say, far, you know, I've got to reach quite far to get them, then I like them to travel quite a way, but then I like them to bike quite far away from the handlebar. So that's just so easy to get them set up for the way that I really like them, which is a massive positive for me. So they're my 3 big positives. Now, in contrast to that, I have to give you guys some negatives. I really don't feel that negative about the brakes in any shape, form or size, but there are a few things that I would change if I had the choice. Number 1 is the carb texture, the bodies of the levers. So basically your bleed screws and the bodies of the lever are made of carb texture as well, and I really don't like having a plastic screw for my bleed screws. You just have to go steady with them. You know, it's no big deal like that really, but again, it just doesn't give you the same confidence as like aluminium bodies would. And then when you come around to the front of the handlebar, the clamps on the front, they're both metal, with the screws being metal, and then again the body's plastic. Now, I think I'd have to take them off and have a proper look, but I think that there must be like a metal insert in the lever body, because if you had a plastic screw if you had a metal screw going into a plastic body, that's just a real bad design flaw, because obviously the screws are a lot stronger than the thing that it's going into, and in engineering it should be the other way around, because if you strip a screw, it's no big deal. If you strip the actual body of what you're screwing into, that's a much bigger fix. So again, I would just prefer to see the levers made of much more metal. The weight doesn't bother me, and it just gives you much more confidence in the feel and just how the levers perform, so that's the only thing. So yeah, they're the only 2 negatives that I can come up with. So to summarize, I fucking love my Magura MT5s. They're absolutely spectacular brakes, and they're perfect for my riding style. Performance and feel are super important to me, and these brakes just nail it on both fronts. Would I prefer to see metal bodies? Of course I would. Would that stop me buying the brakes again, or will it stop me upgrading to a set of MT7s in a few years' time? Absolutely not. I'd take a set of carbon texture Maguras, MT7s, any day of the week over a set of metal Guide Rs. Not even a second thought given. They're that good. And like I say, I've got absolutely no doubt that my next set of brakes is going to be another set of Maguras. So if I had to score them, I'd give them 9 out of 10. Only reason being is because I think that they can be made better with a bit more metal there. But that's it for my review. Spectacular brakes. Recommend them to anyone. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. On your bikes.